Welcome to Dominate Your Day podcast. This is the podcast that adds value to leaders who want to make a difference in the workplace. We believe each person is unique and has a purpose they can live out every day and make an impact in the world. Here at Dominate Your Day podcast, we hear stories from leaders who have used their unique talents to transform themselves and their companies from the inside out.
So welcome back to Dominate Your Day. I'm excited today to introduce you to Jenn Drummond. Jenn has a unique story. She's an author, she's a podcaster, she's a professional speaker, but she also has a very interesting story. So Jenn, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me today.
So tell us, before we get into your story, I'd love for you to tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Okay. I'm a business owner. I hired myself out of a job so that I could be a stay-at-home mom. I plateaued a little bit there, not knowing how to get out of that stay-at-home mom thing and transition back into work and still be a good mom. I survived a horrific car crash in 2018 that should have taken my life and didn't. Instead, it woke me up to the sacredness of life and to make the most of every moment. So from there, I got into mountaineering and just recently set a world record as the first woman to climb the second highest peak on each of the 7 continents. I have a book coming out, and probably my favorite role is being a mom to 7 amazing humans.
Okay, I'm going to start there because when I saw 7, I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's that."
Yes.
Well, first, your story of surviving car wreck is we got to talk about that. But I want to. What is the secret to being a mom to 7 kids? I mean, what is the biggest wisdom and a working mom too?
Yeah. The nice thing is my kids are close together in age. So I actually struggled to get pregnant
Mm,
and had to use fertility treatments. Nothing was working for the longest time. So anybody who's on that journey, I feel for you. I've been there. It's a constant reminder when things are not working because you test every month to let you know that
mm.
it didn't work. Finally, we came up with a chemical cocktail that turned me into a hen. And all of a sudden, we had embryos, and I believed that embryos were life. So that's
Mhm.
how I ended up with 7 amazing humans. Luckily for me, they're close in age. So they kind of all parent and police each
Oh,
other, right? So as long as you get the established rule and then you let everybody else help make sure that rule is enforced, life's pretty
that's
good.
amazing. Did you have some twins in there or triplets or anything?
I do have a set of twins. So I have 5 boys that were single births, and then at the bottom, I have twin daughters.
Oh, wow. So I bet those
I know, I got the
boys are taking
girls.
care of the
Yes.
girls, huh?
Oh, for sure. It's a tight-knit
That's
group.
awesome. Well, Jen, talk about your story. So that is a story in itself, just being a mother to 7 and going through infertility and having all your children. That's congratulations and amazing. Tell me
Thank you.
about the accident. It was 2018.
Yeah. So it's 2018. All my kids were in school, and I kept telling myself, like, once they go to college, then I'll get back to me. Once I go to college, I'll get back to me. But right now, I'm just in the season of motherhood, and this is what it is. I want to be there for them. I was driving home from a nearby town, and I collided with a semi.
Mm,
I started going end over end and then sideways and ended up upside down in the median. Went to the hospital. I was amazingly okay. I got sent home. A couple weeks after the accident, I got a call from the police station and they're like, "Hey, listen, we've rebuilt this accident at least 50 different ways. We cannot build a scenario where you live, let alone
really?
walk away." Yes. So that was just, and it was one of those that you looked at your car the next day. And I remember thinking, because I had to go to where they towed it to see if I had anything left in the vehicle that I wanted to take home. And when I went to the car, I just sobbed because it looked like a crushed tin can. I mean, it did not look like a car. And you're just like, how did I survive this? And how did this happen? And a few weeks after all of that went down, a girlfriend of mine was running on a trail and it was wet out. She slipped, hit her head, and never came home.
Mm,
So I'm trying to make sense of how do I survive this horrific car
mhm,
crash? She does something healthy and doesn't get to come home. And it was kind of the processing of these 2 events that I realized we don't get to choose when we die.
mm-mm.
but we sure get to choose how we live. And every day is a choice. When I started looking at my life, I'm like, man, I'm not really living.
Mm,
I'm definitely putting my life on hold. And if my daughter was an adult, would I want her to be living my
mm,
life? And the answer was no. So then that was a cue to me saying, hey, guess what? I can be a good mom and I can do things that get me excited and I can run a business. And there's this word called
mhm,
and it's available to me and all the roles that I play. And so 2019 became this big year of the bucket list.
mm,
What are places that I want to visit? What are things I want to see? What are things that I want to do before my time's up?
mm.
And so when I started looking at this big bucket list, it was interesting. I was turning 40 in 2020 and I looked at the list. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to climb a mountain. I'm going to climb a mountain for my 40th birthday and just launch this next decade with this significant event at the start of it. And so I looked up some mountains, was guided to climb one named Ama de Blanc. It's the Paramount Pictures logo. So the
Oh,
stars
yeah.
kind of go around that mountain. I'm like, yeah, that's a cool mountain to climb. Of course, everybody knows it. So I am training for that. COVID happens. So now all of a sudden, I'm not traveling anywhere and I'm a homeschool teacher to 7 children because school is all shut
Mm.
down. One of my kids was struggling with his math homework. I'm like, listen, buddy, we do hard things. You've got this. And he looks at me and he goes, if we do hard things, why are you climbing a mountain called I'm a Dumb Blonde instead of a real mountain like Mount Everest? I'm a da Blom, honey, not I'm a dumb blonde. Like, thank you.
Oh my gosh.
Cute. Finish your homework. We'll look at Everest. So he did and we did. I thought, you know what? Why not Everest? If he thinks this is the hardest mountain in the whole world, I'm going to climb it and show him we can do whatever our hard thing is.
Wow.
So I called the coach. Now all of a sudden I'm training for Everest and AMA. The coach sends me a book about becoming an uphill athlete. And so I'm reading it. And in the front of it, there's this lady who got a Guinness World Record for doing something in the Alps. I was kind of half joking with my coach on the next call, saying, like, I could have done that. Like, I can do hard things.
Mhm.
My kids would think I'm super cool because they all learned how to read on those Guinness World Record books. And right now, I'm not cool. Like, homeschool Jen is not a cool
Mm.
version of me and my family. And my coach kind of laughed. He's like, I'll think of something. So a few weeks later, he calls back. He's like, Jen, I have the perfect world record for you. I'm like, okay. He's like, I think you should be the first female to climb the 7-second summits. I'm like, what? I don't even know what those are. He's like, well, listen. He goes, it's the second highest point on each of the 7 continents. It's harder than the first 7. Only one male has done it so far.
Wow.
You'd be the first woman. And he goes, and think about it, 7 continents, 7 mountains, 7 children. It sounds like a jackpot. Like, it does kind of sound like a
Mm.
jackpot. So I looked at it with the kids and I said, why not? And I signed up. I'd never slept in a tent before, but we're good. We're good. We'll figure it out.
Wow. Okay. So how long, so you'd never climbed a mountain before, and all of a sudden you're like, I've had this life-changing event. I got out of this accident. I'm okay. Now I want to go live. Why mountain climbing?
So I had climbed one mountain before. So in 2016, I climbed the Grand Teton in Jackson
Okay.
Hole. And I just remember that being like a really significant time. I loved the experience. I loved the time in nature. I loved the whole thing. And so it was on my bucket list. And so when I was looking at the bucket list for what I wanted to do for my 40th birthday, that kind of stood out.
Mm.
And so then that triggered the next thing, which triggered the next things, which triggered the next thing. And there you go.
And so you did it. So you did all 7.
I did. I did. It took two and a
I was
half
going to ask
years.
you, what kind of training did you do to get ready for that?
Oh, it's tons of training. It took 2.5 years because mountains have different seasons that you can climb them. And then 2 mountains took twice because we didn't summit the first time. Mother Nature had other plans for
Mm.
us. And then so training was, very intentional. The nice thing is a lot of it's vertical. So anytime I would pass a staircase, they'd be like, oh, I'm going to go run up and down that
Mhm.
staircase. Right. And it would just be like, it's these little teeny tiny things that when I park in a parking garage, I park so that I have to walk the most amount of stairs because those little things add up and help you climb a mountain like Mount
Mm.
Everest.
So of all the mountain climbing experiences you had on all 7 summits, what was your most memorable?
Oh, they're all pretty memorable in their own way, if I had to be honest. Like every mountain has its special story that kind of tugs at your heart. But I will say climbing in Antarctica was pretty surreal.
Mm.
just being in Antarctica and being in an environment where there's no life, and there's no bugs, there's no trees, there's no plants, there's no flowers, there's just nothing. So it's very stark to look at. It's very quiet to listen to. It's very just out there. And then you're on this mountain that had only been summited by maybe 15 people
Wow.
before, one female. And I just remember thinking, if I was born when my mom or grandma were born, this wouldn't even be in the realm of possibility.
Mm,
And so being there was such an honor because it kind of signified how far we've come as society. And it got me excited about what will my girls be doing.
mm. So when you decided to climb and do all 7, was there I know that's a bucket list thing, and I know you're living your best life now because you're, in this spirit of I almost could have died. What is left for me? What are the lessons, excuse me, that you've taken away from this experience?
Oh, so many, right? I think a lot of times we get caught up in our goals. The goal is not the goal. The goal just gets us on a path to have experiences that we get to share
Mm,
with others in this world. So I wrote a book titled Break Proof: 7 Strategies to Build Resilience and Achieve Your Life Goals. And what I do is I take the reader on each one of these climbs with me.
mm,
And we go to that experience, and then I extract a key lesson from that particular climb and help the reader look at it from their life and their perspective and how they can apply it and maybe get further in their pursuits. So, for example, one of the principles is big mountains take big teams.
mm.
So, the bigger our goal, the bigger the mountain, the bigger whatever, the bigger the team you need to have in place to make that happen.
Oh, I love that.
I think a lot of times we think, "Oh, I have this big thing and I need to achieve it by myself." Well, that's like climbing a mountain and carrying all the bags up by yourself. You're gonna get tired. You're gonna get worn out. You're gonna be like, "Never
Hmm.
mind. I don't need to see that summit. This is fine. We're far enough." And so when you start having those feelings or experiences, I encourage you to stop
Hmm.
and just say, "Hey, is there a way somebody can help me to make this pursuit easier?"
Mm,
And what would that help look like? And what could they do? And when we allow people to be a part of our journey,
mhm.
we all get to go farther.
I love that. That speaks so much to entrepreneurs. We've got a lot of coaches out there
Yes.
and to people
Yes.
within corporations that are afraid to partner up with somebody because they feel like they have to do it all themselves. And I think that
Right.
is a great message, especially as we're looking at the end of 23 and thinking about 24 right now. It's like, okay, who's the team you need around?
Definitely.
So tell us how many people did you have when you climbed, when you climbed your,
Yeah, so let's talk about
yeah.
Everest, for example, right? So Everest is a huge mountain and it's very commercialized nowadays, which makes it so much safer to climb. If I would have was trying to climb Everest in the 80s, I can't even
Mm,
imagine because it is just such a crazy mountain. It's huge. There's so many different sections. And nowadays they make it so easy because, for example, when I went to Everest, I had to have a team here take care of my
mm,
kids. So who's running the show here? Who's got everything covered? How are they all doing? So that when I was there, I could mentally be there and not be concerned about the wheels falling off the bus back at
mhm.
home. And then when you're at Everest, Everest has teams that are designated to parts of the mountain. So there's actually a team called the Icefall Doctors. So the Icefall is probably the most dangerous part of Everest. It's at the base. It's what shifts 3 to 6 feet a day. It's where you see the ladders that connect crevasse to crevasse that people can pass through. So this team goes in there and sets the ropes and sets the routes, and then they clean it up every day because it moves. I had to go through the ice fall 4 times to climb. Every time I went through it was a different route.
Wow.
If I had to find that route or decide what to do, it would be impossible, right? It would
Mhm.
take so much longer. So they make it that much more efficient. Add drones to the picture, and now they can even send that technology up ahead and say, okay, is this the best way to go? Or are we going to hit a dead end and we need to go back this way?
Wow.
Right. And then you have different sections of the mountains. There's 4 camps on Everest before you hit the summit. You have chefs on Everest. You have people that, I mean, there's so many people that make that summit possible that I can't imagine doing it with like just 2 people and be like, hey, let's see what
So
happens. It's
you had to
crazy.
plan. Not only did you have to train yourself, but you had to plan way in advance, right? For each of these, to have the right people in place, to be that they knew you were coming, that, just you couldn't just go, let's go climb Mount Everest. I mean, you have to plan that out. And
Right. So everybody climbs Everest in May because that's the season to climb Everest. And so all teams work together and decide that, hey, we're going to contribute to the ropes and to all the things and get the permits for May. And then everybody runs different sections of the mountain. And for 2 weeks, typically in the month of May, the jet stream stops over Everest. So you don't have 100-mile-an-hour
mm,
winds because you'll get blown off the top. So that's why you'll sometimes see the long lines and the news, like, oh, look at the line to climb Everest today. That's because everybody tried to go the same day.
ah,
A lot of times there's many days that you can summit, but that's not guaranteed, right?
mm-hmm,
Mother Nature plays a big role in whether you can summit or not. So it's just, Everest is one of those examples. If you have an Everest like goal, which is a huge,
mm-hmm,
big, hard goal, the question to ask yourself is, do you have enough
mm,
teammates in place
mm-hmm.
to get to the top?
That's a great question. Can you give us 2 or 3 more of your principles from the book, just to get everybody's wet their whistle as they're thinking about? I know I just had lunch with somebody that climbs mountains, and she just got back from what is it? Taking a helicopter and hiking, and in
Okay.
Canada. And she was telling me about that. I was like, wow. And that was this summer. But I think, wow, this is a kind of cool goal, but bringing it back to business and bringing it back to life of just your normal day and giving these principles, I think is so helpful. So yeah, share
Yeah.
us maybe 1 or 2 more.
Yeah, I'll share another story that we had. So when we were climbing on Mount Logan, which is the second highest point in Canada, and the second highest point, or it's the highest point in Canada, but the second highest point for North America, we were in a horrific snowstorm. And when you're in a low light snowstorm, you're using goggles on your face to protect your skin and eyes. And my goggles had a pink lens on them. And that's good for low light, right? You don't want the sun
Mhm.
shades because there's not sun, so it makes it look too dark when you look out your lenses. So if you have pink lens, it kind of gives you depth perception in these different pieces. So all of a sudden, we're hiking, I have my pink lens glasses on. I kind of forget that we're in this snowstorm because the snow starts to look like cotton
Mm,
candy. And I feel like I'm in this cotton candy bowl,
mm.
right? And then everything's just blowing around. And then I'm thinking about Candyland and what happens if that was real. And then I'm tied to a rope to the person next to me, and the rope on the ground looks like a watermelon rind. So now all of a sudden I'm singing that song, Watermelon Sugar High, and I'm having a good time thinking of my kids and all this. Well, my alarm goes off because you forget to eat at altitude.
Ah,
Sometimes you don't get the hunger signal, and you have to eat and you have to drink because you're fueling for 12 hours from now.
mm,
You're not fueling for right now, and you always have to stay ahead of
mm.
it because you're in extreme environments. So the alarm goes off, and I go to adjust my goggles, and all of a sudden, all the energy escapes my body. I look at my teammates and say, like, how long have we been in this horrific snowstorm that we probably shouldn't be moving in? And they look at me as if I'm from a foreign country. Like, we've been in this thing for the last 2 hours with you. Where have you been? And why are you acting all shocked all of a sudden? And it was interesting because they had a clear lens glass, right? So they didn't have the tint on their glasses.
Ah,
And here's the thing: if we're going from point A to point B, it can be hard. But maybe we can change the
mm,
lens at what we look at the situation
mhm,
from. And now all of a sudden it's an entirely different experience, but we're still getting from point A to point B.
mhm.
And so anytime something is really hard and you just feel like you're gritting your teeth or you're pushing forward or every step is just work, I encourage you to stop and say, where can I breathe ease into this experience? Is there another perspective that I can take that would allow me to have more fun on this journey? And when we're having fun, we have a lot more energy than if we're trying to like muscle through every single thing ahead of us.
Wow. That must be overwhelming just all of a sudden go, uh-oh, something's not right.
Oh my God, it was crazy. I mean, it was fascinating for me to see how fast your energy shifted.
Mm.
I mean, I was having fun. I was dancing. We were going down the rope. Like everything was la la la. And then all of a sudden I was like, what happened? Like where, like it was just crazy. And I think of that anytime I get into a hard time. I'm like, oh, I must just not have the right lens on
Mm.
to have this
That's
experience. And just that little cue allows you to shift into a different energy and pursue what you're doing with more joy.
so these teammates that were with you, were they with you on
Yeah.
all 7 mountains, or were there different peo
Every team was different on every mountain.
Wow. So do you have the same coach with you for all of them?
Most of the time, the coaches don't come. You just hire different climbing guides. So I tried to work with guides that were in the country that I was going to so I could benefit their economy.
Mm.
Sometimes that's not the safest option. So you still want to work with people from the US because we have higher safety standards, but it just depends. And some guides I did do for more than one climb. Like, so Todd Passey's a good friend of mine. He owns In the Company of Guides. We did Antarctica together and we did Mount Logan together and we did a lot of training climbs in between.
So he was kinda with you in different situations and saw, I mean,
He was with me in 2 mountains of the 7.
it's so interesting we talk about partnerships and how important partnerships are, and so establishing trust and all the things that you
Yes.
are, especially when you get ready to climb a mountain. So how did you do that when you were going to a new country and you had to find that coach and then find those teammates, and it just and build trust and make sure that you had to because you're not with the same team every time.
Right. Yeah. If you're into mountaineering pursuits, you are doing things that can be life or death situations. So there's no sugarcoating,
Mhm.
right? There's no pretending that you're something bigger than you are or whatever. Everybody has to just be real honest and real authentic of what their strengths and weaknesses are because you can play to them if you know
Mhm.
them. Right? We can adjust to them. So for example, when we're climbing, if somebody knows the route, they might say, "Hey, around this next corner, it's going to get windy. You might want to put another jacket on." So because the time to put the jacket on is before you hit the wind,
Yeah.
not after you hit the wind, right? And so that's the advantage of having somebody that's been in this pursuit before and knows what you're doing, and then they can guide you up the mountain. But it's also on you to say, am I cold? Am I warm? Do I need something? Am I going to be, if something goes wrong, am I able to operate at my optimum right now? And you always need to have that in mind. If something goes wrong, are we able to recover? If something goes wrong, am I good? So sometimes when we were climbing Everest, it would actually get really hot. And it would get hot because the sun would be out and it'd reflect off of all the different surfaces and just kind of radiate up. You wanted to take off every layer of clothing you had. However, if you fell into a crevasse and it was 4 hours for you to be rescued and you only had a t shirt on, you would be dead. So you sometimes wore more layers than what you wanted to because if the worst case scenario happened, you wanted to stay alive.
Wow. So it sounds
Yeah.
like just having that experience and leaning on those people because you are in these life and death experience what you're going through, which you experienced in your car wreck, and then you're repeating kind of
Yeah.
as you go forward. So tell us about an experience you had that was probably the scariest.
I mean, I've had a few of those, right? We lost a teammate on
Uh,
K2 to an avalanche. And so those are things you read about. You don't think it's going to happen to you. And when it happens to you, it's
mm,
heartbreaking, right? It's just interesting how it happens and what happens and how you feel about it. I was on K2. I was actually ahead of the team by a day because there wasn't enough campsites. And so I volunteered to go a day ahead. And that had me not next to that individual
mm,
that passed away. You're like, "Man, if I would have done this different, what would have happened?"
mm,
Right? There's all those,
mhm,
questions that leave unanswered. And when I was on the mountain, I had the choice to go up or to come down. I'm like, "I'm not gonna go up this mountain. My teammate just died. I'm gonna go down and take care of my team. The mountain will always
mhm,
be here. Who we are as people is way more important than anything
mhm,
we'll ever achieve." And so I went down the mountain to take care of my team and then came back another year to go summit. And I think in life we have a lot of these things that show up,
mhm.
right? Like don't let the summit pull you away from being a human
Wow.
because it's the journey that we make the moments of our lives. It's not the summit. You're on the summit for maybe 10 minutes.
Mm,
So if you have the confidence that you know that someday you're going to make it to the summit, it becomes less about making it to the summit and more about how you're showing up as a person. Are you having fun? Are you impacting others? And what does your story and legacy look like? And I encourage all of us as we chase our pursuits in business, personal, and whatever else, that we keep that in mind.
So what's next for you?
I have the book coming out, right? So the book's been a big project for me. I'm taking my 3 oldest boys climbing in Africa in
Oh,
February
wow.
to just share that experience with them and let them feel it in their bodies, not just read about it. And then I'm not allowing myself to pick up any other major quests until this one's been a year old, because I'm quick to start and hard to stop. And I want to have a season of winter.
Mhm.
I want to have a season where I'm not on and trying to pursue something. I'm allowing myself to rest and recover.
Well, I think, wow, there's so many lessons in here, not only in just from climbing that help others think about what they're doing in their life, like just taking a moment to pause, um, how to be in the present, right? You don't have your cell phone, going through social media when you're climbing. You are in
Right.
the present, right? And you're looking at nature and you're
Yes.
being curious and you're thinking ahead. And I think we've become such a society that's addicted to chaos and drama, and to get out in nature like that and really just let those electronics go and get with a team and have a goal. I think that's so powerful. And I think there's a lot of lessons there.
There is. There's definitely. It's so much fun. And read the book. Like, I promise you, you'll love it. I have a friend that was the one who encouraged me to write it. He's like, I don't even like mountaineering, and this is fascinating. So
Well, I
there
mean,
you
your
go.
principles already, you've given us a little taste of them, are really powerful. So tell people how they can get the book. What is the best way?
Yep. Okay, so you can go to Amazon.com and search up Breakproof or Jenn Drummond. Also, go to my website. We have a link there. And then on my website, I have introductions to some of the challenges that I run. So I run a 40-day Everest challenge. So you'll climb Everest from the comfort of your home over 40
Oh, wow.
days, which is super fun. It talks about my speaking engagements, and it also has all my social media handles. So if you have a platform of preference, definitely connect to me, reach out, say hi. It's probably my favorite thing about doing podcasts is meeting new individuals and hearing what you're up to.
That's great. And what's your website name?
Yep. So it's
Jen. Okay.
jendrummond.com. So
That's
JENNDRUMMOND.
I bet when 2019 happened and the wreck, you had no idea that here it is almost 5 years later that you would have climbed the mountain, 7 mountains, written a book, and now getting ready to take 3 of your oldest boys, I guess, on the journey. So you're really role modeling to them that you can do anything you want to do. Just prepare
You
and
can.
and get the right training, and now helping others through your website and your book and your social media. So Jenn, thank you so much for being here today and sharing your story. And it was very inspiring for me, and I know it will be for our listeners. And we just look forward to following you next and see what you're up to. So thank you.
Thank you. Have a
Okay,
great
you
day.
too.
You have been listening to Dominate Your Day podcast. If you're ready to transform your life and workplace from the inside out, go to danawilliamsco.com and set up a discovery call. We would love to connect with you and equip you with some helpful resources. Thank you for listening today, and please take a moment to subscribe to Dominate Your Day wherever you listen.